Deep in the heart of ancient Egypt, an incredible discovery has just been made.
Look at the debris. It's untouched. Nobody did touch for thousands of years.
This is incredibly important.
The most significant find since King Tut's tomb was unearthed a century ago.
This is really a large city that was lost. We never thought that this city could be discovered.
One of the biggest settlements of the West Bank here in Luxor.
Behold, the lost city of Luxor.
It was found in the Golden Age of Egypt, 1391 BC.
For the first time in history, archaeologists can see where the treasures found in Egyptian tombs were made.
These are not houses. These are really workplaces.
This city is the most important discovery after the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun in the West Bank of Luxor.
A dazzling procession in the center of Cairo, Egypt's modern-day capital. Armored hearses transport precious mummies to their new home. Pharaohs and queens who ruled over one of the greatest civilizations in history. In the same week, 300 miles to the south, another procession heralds the discovery of the largest ancient city in Egypt.
مصر القديم كنا دايما بنقول ان الحضاره المصريه القديمه حضاره موت وحضاره بعث. دلوقتي بندينا التفاصيل الكبيره على الحياه المصري القديم. لقينا هنا جره موجود فيها.
The area lies on the west bank of the Nile, near Luxor, once the ancient capital of Thebes. You'll find the Temple of Karnak, the Valley of the Kings, the Tomb of Tutankhamun. Archaeologists had been searching for over 100 years.
It's very true that it was lost because they had to find it.
Like many discoveries, the site was found almost by accident.
When we started excavations, we were planning to find the mortuary temple of the King Tutankhamun.
This mortuary temple was believed to be somewhere close by.
Why here? Because the two temples of the King Ai and the King Hormhed, they already were found here in this area.
The expedition team had uncovered mud brick walls leading in all directions.
After taking the debris out, we did figure out that we are in front of settlement.
فلقينا موميا ولقينا خواتم ولقينا فخار.
Look at the zigzag roads. Look at the zigzag wall. The entire city was constructed of limestone.
What the team uncovered was the site of a well-preserved city with streets and buildings.
The city still extended to the west and also to the north. Maybe it's connected with the temple of Amenhotep III.
The city was on a scale never seen before.
We found three major districts, one for administration, one for the workmen to sleep, one for the industry.
Archaeologists are calling this site the Pompeii of ancient Egypt.
To see enormous jars that clearly date to the time of Amenhotep III still lying on the ground as if they'd been left there yesterday was really unexpected and exciting.
We found the name written, the name of Amenhotep III found in the mud bricks.
Since the earliest times, Egyptian domestic architecture has used mud brick, the ideal building material because it's made from Nile silt, which dries like cement.
The height of the walls being preserved to the height of, maybe 10 feet in some cases, represent houses or buildings that had 2 floors. And the reason we can say that is that there are staircases preserved all over the place.
The city dates back 3,400 years to the reign of Amenhotep III, also known as Amenhotep the Magnificent.
Amenhotep III reigned for 38 and about 2/3 years, so a lengthy time, and he was probably somewhere around 10 to 12 years of age when he came to the throne.
A side lock of hair signifies a young pharaoh.
He was born at a time when Egypt had created an enormous empire that stretched all the way to northern Syria in the north to the Fifth Cataract on the Nile River in modern Sudan in the south.
Amenhotep III was the wealthiest king in ancient Egypt. He had more gold than anyone before or after.
He could just sit back and enjoy being king, the wealthiest king that Egypt had ever known. He used that opportunity to build things and put his name out there and connect himself to the gods.
Amenhotep III wanted to be remembered as an incarnation of the sun god. Egyptologists consider his reign as the high point of Egyptian art. He built most of the temples and palaces on the west bank of the Nile.
The only reason that he's not a sort of household name is because Ramses II wanted to be just as famous and actually stole many of his monuments and put his own name on them.
For the ancient Egyptians, gold was more than a precious metal.
Talk about gold and to have objects made of gold really relates to a king having the flesh of their gods. Tutankhamun has a solid gold coffin and a solid gold mask on top of his mummy because that gives him that gold flesh of the gods.
It has taken 7 months of labor to excavate this diverse industrial part of the city.
One area for storage, we found a big area for the storage of making sandals, also sewing clothing, precious stones for making necklaces and bracelets.
The artifacts from this site give Egyptologists more details about a pharaoh who ruled over 3,000 years ago.
Amenhotep III does emerge in many ways as someone who knew exactly how wealthy he really was in comparison to kings in the rest of the world.
To immortalize his magnificence, he erected 2 50-foot-high statues of himself, each from a single piece of quartzite stone brought from a quarry 400 miles away.
Amenhotep III shows himself seated with his wife, Queen T, on one side of his legs, and his mother, Mut-Emwiya, on the other side of his legs. What's not very easily visible is that the feet of one of his daughters is also there on his lap.
An Egyptologist entering an excavated room works much like a crime scene investigator.
قدماء المصريين السور ماشي ازاي مستمر.
You want to see what the walls are resting on. Are they resting on an actual floor?
الفخارية العمل لازم يكون بقدر مهم جدا من الدقة. دول العمال المتمرسين الحرفيين الفنانين.
Then you're also looking at what kind of pottery is lying there.
We found a wine and also we found dry meat.
What the Egyptians would do would be to cook meat and then put the already cooked meat into jars that were then sealed.
The scores of precious objects uncovered point to a large, prosperous city.
لا خلاص احنا دي موجوده في مخزن هنا، احنا عملنا عليها دراسات كامله، لكن بلا شك ان هذه الاثار اللي طلع كلها حاجات ضخمه.
These molds are very exciting because they're just little fired clay molds that have been carefully carved. They have the amulets that come from these molds. So they can show you a mold and then they'll show you several examples of the actual amulets. This town is the first time that you walk into a single room and you find 5 ovens in the kitchen area. All of these craft specialization areas are divided up by these serpentine walls.
Serpentine walls, also known as sinusoidal walls, provide more stability and strength than a straight wall of the same bricks.
ادي الشكل اللي اتكلمنا عليه. مش بس استغل السور كزجزاجي بهذا الشكل لحماية، استغل الفراغات.
An area that was doing food production was then separated by a serpentine wall from an area that was making things like jewelry and amulets.
A rare find is an entire fish encrusted with gold that may have been used in ceremonies.
100 قالب اللي كان بيتعمل فيه التمائم. طلعنا حاجات كلها من الحاجات الثمينة اللي هي الأحجار الثمينة اللي عمل خواتم العقود اللي تمت.
The Nile River runs through Luxor. For the Egyptians, the Nile was the symbol of continuing life and procreation.
Amenhotep III emphasized that fertile nature of the Nile and the agricultural output that resulted from the Nile flood that took place every year. And the king wanted to be able to take credit for that.
But the most important thing are the statuettes of Queen T, the wife of Amenhotep III.
Queen T became sort of his soulmate, one might guess. They were really seen as a ruling couple.
Egyptian history is told by each pharaoh's reign.
There are two reigns here that we're really looking at closely that are associated with this new village. One is the time of Amenhotep III, his wife Queen T.
The second reign belonged to Akhenaten, or Amenhotep IV, and his wife, Queen Nefertiti.
It is fascinating to see how both of these kings actually included their family and their children in how they presented themselves. They wanted their children to be seen as different aspects of various goddesses.
One of Amenhotep III's many innovations was to produce scarabs in the shape of a beetle. For the Egyptians, this was a symbol for the sun as it rose in the morning.
He had a group of scarabs made that were about the size of someone's hand. And on one side, you have this scarab beetle, and then you turn it over, and on the other side was an inscription.
These were announcements for events like a lion hunt or a royal marriage.
They were used as gifts to local rulers to announce about the greatness of Amenhotep III, and were like an early form of social media. You might even think of them as a tweet.
3 skeletons have been found. One was a person with rope wrapped around the knees. The other 2 came from cows.
وبعتقد ان طبعا السكيلتون او الهيكل العظميه الاثنين اللي عثر عليهم للبقره حتحور هي بتمثل الملكه الالهه حتحور، الهه الحب والجمال في مصر القديمه.
The work of digging out an entire city will take years to complete.
I think we need another 5 years to continue the excavation on the south to find the funerary temple of Tutankhamun.
And tell us more about Amenhotep's family and his dazzling reign.
What we will learn about how everything was being made in this time period to service this remarkably wealthy king and his, frankly, heretic son.
And we believe that we're gonna find more and more and more.
This will turn out to be a larger city than Amarna, the city that Akhenaten founded a few years after his father died.
The site may uncover even more about Tutankhamun, who also ruled here.
The city should be used all by Tutankhamun, not only Amenhotep III, but this will come through the excavation.
Creating a more detailed picture of one of the world's greatest civilizations.
فيش في مصر في عالم مصر كله ما لقيناش فخار قد اللي لقيناه.
Experts believe this monumental discovery is just the tip of the iceberg.
But this excavation is really proving for the first time that we still have to do more and more excavation.
We are planning to impress the entire world.
We think that this is the beginning of the discovery.